To a new era. Without you. Those words hung in the air like poison. I maintained my composure, took a long sip of my freshly brewed coffee, and raised my cup with a slight smile that didn't reach my eyes. To a new era, I echoed, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Richard Taylor, my boss of 7 years and mentor of 3, didn't even have the decency to look me in the eye as he made the announcement. The annual company meeting had turned into my public execution, with 30 of my colleagues as witnesses. Some looked away uncomfortably, others seemed to relish the moment, and a brave few shot me sympathetic glances. What Richard didn't know was that I already had another plan. When he noticed the documents on the table and the competitor's proposal that I had signed, his face would tell a different story. But that would come later. For now, I was Alexandra Winters, Senior Marketing Director who had just been unceremoniously dismissed from the company she had helped build. Alexandra has been an integral part of Taylor Innovations for the past decade, Richard continued, his practiced speech rolling off his tongue. But as we move forward with our new direction, we've decided it's time for fresh perspectives. Fresh perspectives. What a convenient euphemism for, I'm replacing you with someone who won't challenge my ideas. Or, more accurately, I'm replacing you with someone who won't get credit for my success. I scanned the room, noting who was avoiding my gaze and who was brave enough to meet it. My team, former team now, looked devastated. Young Emma, my protégé, had tears in her eyes. Mark, my right-hand man for 5 years, was clenching his jaw so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. And then there was Daniel, Richard's son and newly appointed vice president, smirking at me from his father's side. Effective immediately, Daniel will be taking over Alexandra's responsibilities, Richard announced proudly, placing his hand on his son's shoulder. He has some exciting new strategies that align perfectly with our vision for the future. My strategies, my vision, my future. All stolen in a single meeting. Handed to a 28-year-old who had spent more time in the company break room than in actual client meetings. I had suspected something was coming. The closed-door meetings I wasn't invited to. Projects reassigned without explanation. Files mysteriously missing from my computer. But I never thought Richard would be so transparent about his nepotism. As the meeting wrapped up and people began to disperse, hushed whispers filling the room, Richard finally approached me. Alexandra, I hope you understand this isn't personal, he said, his voice lowered as if that would somehow make his betrayal more palatable. Business is evolving. We need to evolve with it. Of course, Richard, I replied, my voice sweet as honey but my eyes cold as ice. I understand completely. He seemed relieved, probably expecting tears or a scene. HR has prepared your separation package. They'll walk you through everything. I hope we can remain amicable. I wouldn't worry about that, I said, gathering my belongings. I'm sure we'll be seeing each other sooner than you think. Confusion flickered across his face, but he dismissed it with a nod before walking away to join his son. I took my time packing my office. 10 years of my life in 3 cardboard boxes. Photos of successful product launches, awards for marketing campaigns that had doubled the company's growth. Thank you notes from clients who had become friends. My life's work reduced to items that would fit in the trunk of my car. Emma knocked softly on my door. Can I come in? I nodded, forcing a smile. This is wrong, she said, her voice breaking. Everyone knows you're the reason this company has survived. The Kingston account alone would have never signed without Daniel's innovative approach, I finished sarcastically. At least that's the official story now. What are you going to do? She asked, concern etched across her young face. I carefully placed my industry awards in the box. I'm going to start over. Better. Stronger. Will you go to Meridian? She asked, referring to our biggest competitor. I met her gaze. Emma, the less you know right now, the better. But I want you to remember something. Always keep records of your work. Every email, every presentation, every brilliant idea you have. Because some people have no qualms about taking credit for work that isn't theirs. She nodded solemnly. I'll miss you. This isn't goodbye, I assured her. It's just a new chapter. After Emma left, I pulled out my phone and sent a text to a number I rarely used. It happened. Meeting at 7? The response came immediately. I'll be there. Bring everything. I took one last look around my office, my sanctuary for the past decade, and closed the door behind me. The HR meeting was brief and clinical. I signed papers, returned my company ID, and listened to explanations about my non-compete clause and severance package. And of course, all company materials must be returned, the HR director said, sliding a form across the table. Of course, I replied, signing it without hesitation. What they didn't know was that I didn't need their materials anymore. I had something much more valuable. As I walked through the lobby for the last time, I nodded to the security guard who had greeted me every morning for years. Goodbye, Frank. Not goodbye, Ms. Winters, he said with a knowing look. Just see you later. I smiled genuinely for the first time that day. You might be right about that. The sun was setting as I drove away from Taylor Innovations, casting long shadows across the building where I had spent countless hours building someone else's dream. But I wasn't leaving empty-handed. At precisely 7 p.m., I walked into a small, upscale restaurant on the other side of town. Seated at a corner table, partially obscured by an ornamental plant, was a man in a tailored suit, his salt and pepper hair betraying his age, but adding to his distinguished appearance. Alexandra, he greeted, standing to pull out my chair. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. Hello, James, I replied, sitting down and placing my bag carefully beside me. I wish it were under better circumstances. James Conrad, CEO of Meridian Enterprises, Taylor Innovations' biggest competitor, and the man who had been trying to hire me for the past 5 years. Circumstances are what we make of them, he said, pouring me a glass of wine. And I have a feeling you're about to make these circumstances work very much in your favor. I took a sip of the wine, rich, bold, expensive. You have no idea. As we ordered dinner, making small talk about industry gossip and market trends, I couldn't help but notice a familiar figure at the bar, nursing a scotch and pretending not to watch us. Daniel Taylor, looking far less confident than he had during the meeting. Perfect. The first piece was falling into place. I believe we're being observed, I murmured to James, who glanced discreetly over my shoulder. Young Mr. Taylor seems concerned about our meeting, he replied with a small smile. Should we give him something to report back to his father? I pulled a folder from my bag and placed it on the table between us. I thought you'd never ask. Daniel's posture stiffened, his attention now fully on our table. I opened the folder, revealing a stack of documents with Meridian's logo prominently displayed on top. I've reviewed your offer, I said loudly enough for my voice to carry slightly, and I'm prepared to accept, with a few conditions. James played along perfectly, his smile widening as he leaned forward. Name them. From the corner of my eye, I saw Daniel fumbling with his phone, undoubtedly texting his father about what he was witnessing. The bait had been taken. First, I continued, I want complete autonomy over my department. No interference, even from upper management. Agreed, James replied. Second, I want to bring in my own team. There are talented people being wasted at Taylor. We can arrange that. And finally, I said, lowering my voice and forcing Daniel to strain to hear, I want access to all client records, especially for accounts I handled at Taylor. James hesitated convincingly. That could be legally problematic. I slid another document across the table. Not with this. It's a loophole in my non-compete agreement. Richard was always sloppy with legal details. It wasn't true, of course. There was no loophole, and I had no intention of violating my non-compete agreement. But Daniel didn't know that, and by tomorrow morning, Richard would be in a panic. Daniel hurriedly paid for his drink and slipped out, smartphone pressed to his ear. I smiled into my wine glass. Was that necessary? James asked once Daniel was gone. Absolutely, I replied. Richard needs to believe I'm out for blood. It's the only way this will work. James studied me for a moment. You know, most people would be devastated after losing a job they've held for 10 years. I'm not most people. I pulled out another folder, this one containing the real documents I wanted to discuss. And I didn't lose anything I wasn't prepared to let go. The mysterious second folder, James remarked, accepting it. I'm intrigued. That, I said as he opened it and his eyes widened, is why Richard Taylor is going to regret ever hearing my name. James looked up from the documents, a mixture of shock and admiration on his face. Alexandra, how long have you been planning this? I thought about the late nights, the careful documentation, the quiet conversations with those I could trust. I thought about the moment 3 months ago when I first discovered what Richard was doing, and how cold determination had replaced my initial disbelief and hurt. Long enough, I answered, raising my glass, to new beginnings. As we clinked glasses, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number, package secured. Meeting location compromised. New contact tomorrow. I deleted the message immediately and returned my attention to James, who was still reviewing the documents with growing amazement. Alexandra, he said finally, you realize once we move forward with this, there's no going back. Richard will come after you with everything he has. I thought about the decade I had given to Taylor Innovations, the missed birthdays, the canceled vacations, the relationship that had withered from neglect while I built Richard's empire. I thought about the casual way he had discarded me, as if all of that meant nothing. Good, I replied, a steel edge to my voice I rarely allowed others to hear. I'm counting on it. What James didn't know, what no one knew, was that the documents I'd just given him were only a small piece of the puzzle. The real evidence was safely stored away, waiting for the perfect moment. Richard thought he had pushed me off a cliff. He was about to discover I could fly. As I drove home that night, another text came through. R knows about dinner. Furious. Office in chaos. Wants emergency board meeting tomorrow. Watch your back. I smiled in the darkness of my car. Phase 1 complete. Now the real game would begin. What I didn't realize then was just how dangerous this game would become, or how many lives, including my own, would hang in the balance before it was over. And I certainly didn't expect that the person who would hold my fate in their hands would be the last one I'd ever suspect. The morning after my dinner with James, I woke to 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. News traveled fast in our industry, especially when it involved someone supposedly betraying their former employer less than 24 hours after being fired. I ignored them all and made my coffee, savoring the quiet of my apartment. Today wouldn't be quiet for long. My doorbell rang at precisely 8:15 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw Mark, my former right-hand man, shifting nervously in the hallway. You shouldn't be here, I said as I opened the door. Neither should you, he replied, pushing past me into the apartment. You should be in hiding after the stunt you pulled last night. I closed the door and leaned against it. Coffee? Alexandra, this isn't a joke. Richard is on the warpath. Daniel told him everything. You, James Conrad, the non-compete loophole, all of it. I smiled as I poured him a cup. Good. Mark stared at me, bewilderment clear on his face. Good? Alexandra, he's calling an emergency board meeting. He's threatening legal action. Your reputation is exactly where I want it to be right now. I finished for him. Mark, do you trust me? He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. Of course I trust you. That's why I'm here instead of sitting in that board meeting that starts in... He checked his watch. 45 minutes. Then, trust that I know what I'm doing. I handed him the coffee. How bad is it at the office? Chaos, he admitted. Half the marketing team is threatening to quit. Emma practically had to be physically restrained from telling Richard exactly what she thinks of him. And the Kingston account is asking for you specifically. They won't deal with Daniel. This was better than I'd hoped. And how is the heir apparent handling his first day? Terribly. He tried to present your strategy for the Westfield launch as his own, but he couldn't answer basic questions about it. Made a complete fool of himself. I sat down at my dining table, gesturing for Mark to join me. I need to know who's on my side, Mark. Really on my side. He didn't hesitate. Emma? Obviously. Me? Sarah from accounting? Probably Frank from security. He let me in this morning without logging my visit. I nodded, making mental notes. What about Jonathan? Mark hesitated. He's complicated. He's angry about how they treated you, but he's also 3 years from retirement with 2 kids in college. Understandable. I pulled out my tablet and opened a secure messaging app. I need you to get something from my old office. Richard was too eager to humiliate me to have my computer wiped immediately. What am I looking for? A red flash drive in the false bottom of my desk drawer. The password is the date we landed the Ericsson account, backward. Mark finished his coffee in one gulp. And if it's not there, then Plan B involves a much more complicated break-in to Richard's home office. And I'd rather avoid that if possible. He stared at me for a long moment. You've changed, Alex. No, I corrected him. I've woken up. Will you help me? You know I will. He stood to leave. But I need to know what I'm fighting for. I considered how much to tell him. Mark had been loyal for years, but everyone had their breaking point. Justice, I finally said. And the truth. That's all I can say right now. He nodded, accepting the partial answer. I'll get the drive. After Mark left, I sent a coded message to my most unexpected ally. Mockingbird in place. Await signal before next move. The response came seconds later. Cardinal watching. Be careful. I showered and dressed as if going to battle. A sharp charcoal suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back severely. My armor for what was coming. At 10:30 a.m., my phone rang with a number I recognized all too well. Richard's private line. Alexandra speaking? I answered coolly. What the hell do you think you're doing? Richard's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. I believe I'm having a leisurely morning at home. The benefit of sudden unemployment. Cut the crap. Daniel saw you with James Conrad last night. You're violating your non-compete agreement less than a day after signing it. I examined my nails, enjoying his distress even though he couldn't see me. Having dinner with an old friend is hardly a violation, Richard. Conrad is not your friend. He's our biggest competitor, and you know it. Perhaps you should have considered that before announcing to the entire company that I'm no longer valued there. I could almost hear his blood pressure rising. The board is meeting right now. We're discussing legal action. How terrifying, I replied dryly. Is that all? I have a spa appointment. This isn't a game, Alexandra. No, it's not, I agreed, my voice suddenly sharp. Games are fair. Games have rules. What you did had neither. There was a pause. When Richard spoke again, his tone had changed. Look, perhaps we acted hastily. Why don't you come in and we can discuss a consulting arrangement? Something that would be mutually beneficial. I almost laughed. You're offering me a job? After yesterday? I'm offering you a chance to protect your reputation and avoid a lawsuit. How generous. I'll have to decline. Alexandra. Goodbye, Richard. Oh, and you might want to prepare Daniel better for the Westfield presentation. I hear his first attempt was rather embarrassing. I hung up before he could respond and immediately sent a text to my burner phone. Call traced to home address. Move meeting location. 30 minutes later, my doorbell rang again. This time, it was a courier with a thick envelope. Inside was a formal legal notice from Taylor Innovations threatening immediate action if I violated my non-compete agreement or shared any proprietary information. I filed it carefully away. Evidence for later. Just as I was about to leave for my actual meeting, my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. Package secured. Meeting at the alternate location in 30. Relief flooded through me. The flash drive contained the first piece of solid evidence I needed. Without it, my word against Richards would never be enough. The alternate location was a small coffee shop in a neighboring town, far from any of our usual haunts. I arrived early, securing a corner table with a view of both entrances. Mark arrived exactly on time, sliding into the seat across from me without a word. Under the table, he pressed something into my palm, the familiar shape of my flash drive. Thank you, I murmured, pocketing it immediately. It wasn't easy, he said quietly. Security protocols have been upgraded overnight. New passwords, restricted access. They're scared, Alex. Good, I replied. They should be. We ordered coffee to avoid looking suspicious. What's on that drive that's worth all this? Mark finally asked. I hesitated, then decided he deserved some truth. Proof that Richard has been systematically stealing intellectual property, not just mine, but from several employees. There's more, but that's the start. Mark's eyes widened. Is that why you've been documenting everything so carefully the past few months? I nodded. I suspected something when the Hendricks campaign launched with ideas identical to ones I'd proposed but were rejected. Then I started noticing patterns. So what's the plan now? Take this to the board? I shook my head. The board is in Richard's pocket. No. We need more evidence first, and we need to build our position. Mark leaned forward. Our position? Alex, what exactly are you planning? Before I could answer, the coffee shop door opened and a familiar figure entered. Emma, her eyes darting nervously around until she spotted us. She hurried over, her face pale. They know, she whispered as she sat down. They know about the drive. There's a security team reviewing footage from your office right now, Mark. They'll know you took it. Mark's face drained of color. How? It doesn't matter, I interrupted. What matters is what we do next. I turned to Emma. How did you find us? Frank texted me. She pulled out her phone, showing a message with the coffee shop's address. He said you'd need my help. My mind raced. If Frank knew where we were meeting, who else did? We need to move. Now. As we stood to leave, the coffee shop door opened again. Standing in the entrance, looking directly at us, was the last person I expected to see. Daniel Taylor, alone and without the cocky smile he'd worn yesterday. Alexandra, he said, his voice unexpectedly urgent. We need to talk. My father isn't who you think he is, and neither am I. Emma and Mark looked to me for direction, confusion evident on their faces. I stared at Daniel, trying to determine if this was a trap. 5 minutes, I finally said. And you'd better make them count. The 5 of us sat in my car in the coffee shop parking lot. Me in the driver's seat, Mark beside me, Emma and Daniel awkwardly squeezed into the back. I'd insisted on leaving the public space immediately, but I wasn't about to take Daniel anywhere private either. 4 minutes left, I said, glancing at Daniel in the rearview mirror. Start talking. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture so reminiscent of his father that it made my jaw clench. I never wanted your job, he began. That was all my father's idea. He's been planning to push you out for months. That's not exactly news, I replied coldly. And it doesn't explain why you're here alone, apparently betraying your father. Daniel leaned forward. Because I found something while going through your files. Something that made me realize my father isn't just ruthless, he's criminal. Mark shifted beside me. What did you find? Financial reports? Doctored ones? Daniel pulled out his phone and showed us a screen. These are the official quarterly projections that were sent to the board last month. I recognized them immediately. I prepared those. And these, he swiped to another document, are the ones my father actually submitted. Even from a quick glance, I could see the numbers were significantly different. He inflated the projections. Daniel nodded grimly. By almost 40%. He's been doing it for at least 3 quarters. Promising returns he knows are impossible. Emma gasped softly. But why? The board would find out eventually. Not if he had a scapegoat, I said slowly, the pieces clicking into place. Someone to blame when the real numbers inevitably fell short. You, Mark said. I met Daniel's eyes in the mirror. He was setting me up to take the fall. That's why he needed me gone before the next earnings report. Daniel nodded. I confronted him about it this morning. He said it was necessary business strategy and that I needed to grow up if I wanted to run the company someday. Why should we believe you? Emma asked suddenly. You've been his golden boy, reaping all the benefits. Daniel's face flushed. Because I may be his son, but I'm not a criminal. And, he hesitated. I respected Alexandra. I still do. What my father did wasn't just wrong. It was stupid. She's the most valuable person in that company. I studied him, looking for signs of deception. You could be setting us up. This could be a trap to catch me violating my non-compete. It's not, he insisted. Look, I reported my father to the board an hour ago. Showed them everything. They're in emergency sessions now, and he's been temporarily suspended pending investigation. This was unexpected. Prove it. Daniel handed me his phone. Check the company email I just forwarded you. I scanned through it. An official notice from the board chairman announcing Richard's temporary removal and an ongoing investigation. It was real. Why come to us? Mark asked. Why not just let the board handle it? Because my father has friends on the board. This could all get swept under the rug. Daniel looked directly at me. And because Alexandra deserves justice. Real justice, not just watching from the sidelines. What's in it for you? I asked bluntly. A chance to fix my father's mistakes, to run the company the right way. He paused. And I need your help. You have evidence I don't you? That flash drive. It has more than just the stolen intellectual property. My eyes narrowed. How do you know about that? Because my father has been paranoid about what you might have documented. He's been ranting about it for weeks. Daniel leaned forward. Whatever you have, combined with what I've found, could make sure he's held accountable. Or it could be exactly what you need to make sure your own hands stay clean while you take over the company. I countered. Daniel didn't flinch. Test me. Give me a task. Something that would prove I'm on your side. I considered this. If Daniel was genuine, he could be an invaluable ally, the insider we needed. If he was lying, we'd need to know before proceeding further. The Kingston account files, I finally said. The complete set, including the original proposal drafts. Daniel blinked. Those are in my father's private server. I'd need his password. Exactly. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. I can get them. It'll take time, maybe a day or two. You have 24 hours, I replied. And Daniel? If this is a trap, remember that I have enough evidence to implicate you along with your father. Blood isn't thicker than prison walls. Understood. He reached for the door handle. How do I contact you when I have the files? I handed him a burner phone. Use this. One call, then destroy it. After Daniel left, the three of us sat in silence for a moment. Do you believe him? Emma finally asked. I don't know, I admitted. But we're going to find out. Mark looked skeptical. And if it is a trap, then we spring it on our terms. I started the car. We need a secure place to work. My apartment and your homes are too obvious. I have an idea, Emma said quietly. My aunt owns a lake house about an hour north. She never uses it except in summer. No one would think to look for us there. I nodded. Perfect. Let's go. The lake house was small but comfortable, nestled among pines with a view of the water. More importantly, it had no digital footprint connected to any of us. While Emma set up a makeshift office in the living room, I finally had a chance to examine the contents of the flash drive. This is even worse than I thought, I murmured as I scrolled through files. Richard hasn't just been stealing ideas. He's been manipulating financial data for years. Mark looked over my shoulder at the screen. Is that what I think it is? A second set of books, I confirmed. He's been inflating revenue figures to the board while reporting lower numbers to certain tax authorities. That's serious fraud, Emma said, her face pale. Prison time serious. No wonder he was so desperate to push you out, Mark added. You were getting too close to his operation. I nodded slowly. The question is, was Daniel really in the dark about all this? Or is this a ploy to save himself? There's only one way to find out, Emma said. Wait for him to deliver those Kingston files. We spent the next several hours organizing evidence, creating timelines, and planning our next moves. By nightfall, we had a comprehensive picture of Richard's schemes, the stolen intellectual property, the financial fraud, the systematically falsified reports. We need to bring James Conrad into this, Mark suggested. Meridian could file a formal complaint about the stolen IP that ended up in their competitors' products. I hesitated. Not yet. If Daniel comes through, we won't need outside help. This can be handled internally, through the board. And if he doesn't? Emma asked. Then we go nuclear, I replied. Every piece of evidence to the SEC, the media, and yes, to Meridian. My phone rang. The secure line I'd given to only one other person. James, I answered. What's wrong? His voice was tight with urgency. Richard knows where you are. Someone in your group is feeding him information. Get out now. As if on cue, headlights swept across the windows as vehicles pulled up outside. We have company, Mark said, peering through the blinds. 2 SUVs. Men in suits. My mind raced. The back door, quickly. There's a path through the woods to the neighbor's property. As we grabbed our essential materials, a hard knock came at the front door. "Ms. Winters? This is security from Taylor Innovations. We need to speak with you immediately." Emma looked at me, panic in her eyes. How did they find us? There was only one explanation. Someone had betrayed us. But who? Mark? Emma? Daniel? Or someone else entirely? "Later," I whispered. "Right now we need to disappear." We slipped out the back door into the darkness, the sound of the front door being forced open following us into the night. As we ran through the trees, one thought burned in my mind. I'd been outplayed. But the game wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Dawn broke over the city as we huddled in a cheap motel room on the outskirts of town. We ditched our phones, purchased burner replacements, and paid cash for everything since our escape from the lake house. "We need to talk about the elephant in the room," Mark said, his voice rough from exhaustion. "Someone sold us out." I looked between my two companions, Mark, disheveled and tense, and Emma, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. One of them might be a traitor, or both could be innocent. Trust was now a luxury I couldn't afford. "Let's analyze what happened," I said carefully. "Only 4 people knew we were at that lake house. The 3 of us and Daniel." "It has to be Daniel," Emma said immediately. "He's Richard's son. Blood is thicker than water." Mark shook his head. "Too obvious. If Daniel wanted to trap us, why go through the elaborate story about his father's fraud? He could have just led security to us directly." "Unless that was part of gaining our trust," I countered. "Make us believe he's on our side, then betray us at the perfect moment." Emma hugged herself, looking small in the oversized chair. "What about James Conrad? You told him where we were." "I told him we were heading north, not the specific location," I corrected her. "And he's the one who warned us." "Conveniently," Mark muttered. I studied him. "You think James is playing both sides?" Mark spread his hands. "Think about it. What better way to destroy Taylor Innovations than to fuel an internal war? He gets access to all their secrets through you, while watching the company implode from the inside." It was a disturbing possibility I hadn't considered. James had seemed genuinely supportive, but he was also a ruthless businessman who stood to gain enormously from Taylor's collapse. "There's another possibility," I said quietly. "Your aunt, Emma. Did you call her before we used the house?" Emma's eyes widened. "No, I would never—" She stopped mid-sentence, her face draining of color. "But I did text my boyfriend that I was safe and where we were going. I didn't think—" "Your boyfriend who works in IT at Taylor," Mark finished, his voice flat. Emma covered her face with her hands. "Oh, God. I didn't think he would. He promised he was on my side. I didn't have the heart to be angry with her. Love makes us vulnerable, Emma. Richard would have known exactly how to manipulate that." "What do we do now?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "They have the flash drive, all our notes. We've lost everything." "Not everything," I replied, pulling a small memory card from my bra. "I made a backup. Old habits die hard." Mark's face broke into a relieved smile. "You brilliant paranoid woman." "But we still need the Kingston files," Emma pointed out. "Without them, we can't prove the connection between the stolen IP and the financial fraud." I nodded, my mind racing. "And we need a new approach. Richard will expect us to go to ground, to hide and regroup, so we'll do the opposite." "What does that mean?" Mark asked. "It means we go public." I stood up and began pacing. Richard's greatest weapon is secrecy. He operates in shadows, manipulating people and information, so we shine a light. Emma looked doubtful. "The media? Without solid proof, they won't touch it. It would be your word against Richard's, and he has the full weight of Taylor Innovations behind him." "Not the media," I clarified. "The board, directly." Mark raised an eyebrow. "The same board that's in Richard's pocket?" "Not all of them," I replied. "Barbara Dixon has always been a straight shooter, and Thomas Westfield owes me after I saved his pet project last year." "Even if you could get to them, what would you say?" Emma asked. "We still need those Kingston files." My phone buzzed. The new burner. A text from an unknown number. "I have what you need. Park Place Hotel, room 512, 2 p.m. Come alone." "It's Daniel," I said, showing them the message. It's a trap, Mark said immediately. Probably, I agreed. But it's also our only lead. Emma shook her head vehemently. You can't go alone. It's too dangerous. If I don't go, we lose our last chance at the Kingston files. If I go with backup, Daniel, or whoever sent this, will spook. I met their eyes. I need to do this. Then at least take this, Mark said, pulling a small device from his bag. It's an emergency transmitter. Press it once, we come running. Press it twice, we call the police. I slipped it into my pocket. If I'm not back in 2 hours, assume the worst. What do we do while you're gone? Emma asked. Prepare for Plan B, I told her. If this goes south, we take everything we have straight to the SEC. The Park Place Hotel was upscale but not flashy, a discreet choice for a meeting. I arrived 30 minutes early, scouting the exits and positioning myself in the lobby with a clear view of the elevators. At 1:55 p.m., I took the service stairs to the 5th floor, approaching room 512 from the side corridor. I listened at the door. Silence. Taking a deep breath, I knocked. The door opened immediately, revealing not Daniel, but a woman I recognized instantly, Margaret Taylor, Richard's wife and Daniel's mother. Alexandra, she said, her voice calm as if we were meeting for lunch. Please come in. I hesitated, then stepped inside. The suite was elegant and empty except for Margaret, who wore a simple but expensive gray dress that matched her perfectly coiffed silver hair. I was expecting Daniel, I said, staying near the door. My son is currently being questioned by the board, she replied, gesturing to a chair. He sent me in his place. I remained standing. Why would he do that? Because Daniel may be Richard's son, but he's also my son. She gave me a meaningful look. And contrary to what people think, he inherited his moral compass from me, not his father. You'll forgive me if I find that hard to believe, I said coolly. Your family hasn't exactly demonstrated trustworthiness lately. Margaret's perfectly composed face showed a flicker of emotion. 27 years I've been married to Richard Taylor. 27 years of watching him build his empire through whatever means necessary. She opened her handbag and removed a flash drive. This is what Daniel promised you. The Kingston files complete and unaltered. I made no move to take it. Why are you helping me? Her smile was sad. Because Richard crossed a line I cannot accept. Using our son as a pawn. Grooming him to continue his corrupt practices. She placed the flash drive on the coffee table. I want better for Daniel. And I want justice for what was done to you. You could have stopped Richard years ago, I pointed out. You must have known what he was doing. I suspected, she admitted. But suspicion is not knowledge, and wives are very good at not seeing what they don't want to see. Her eyes met mine directly. Until we can't anymore. I studied her, searching for deception. What changed? Richard changed. Or perhaps he simply showed his true self more clearly. She sighed. When he decided to scapegoat you for his financial manipulations, to destroy your career to save himself, I realized the man I married was gone, if he was ever truly there at all. And Daniel? Where does he stand in all this? My son made his choice when he reported his father to the board. Margaret's voice was firm. He wants to rebuild the company, the right way, but he needs your help. I finally took the flash drive. What do you want from me? Testify to the board, today. Tell them everything you know, show them your evidence. Combined with what Daniel has provided, it will be enough to remove Richard permanently. And after, Daniel becomes CEO with his mother's guidance? Margaret shook her head. After, the board will need someone who truly understands the company, who has the vision to repair the damage Richard has done. Her gaze was steady. They'll need you, Alexandra. I almost laughed. Me? After everything that's happened? Especially after everything that's happened. She stood, smoothing her dress. The board meeting reconvenes at 4 p.m. Daniel will be there to corroborate your testimony. She moved toward the door, then paused. One last thing. There's a file on that drive labeled personal. It's not related to the Kingston account, but you should see it before the meeting. After Margaret left, I inserted the flash drive into my laptop with caution. The Kingston files were all there. Original drafts, manipulated reports, the complete paper trail of Richard's fraud. And then there was the file labeled Personal. I clicked it open and felt my breath catch. It was an email chain between Richard and James Conrad from 6 months ago, discussing a potential merger between Taylor Innovations and Meridian Enterprises. The plan involved systematically devaluing Taylor's stock through manufactured failures, enabling Meridian to acquire it at a fraction of its worth. The final email was from James. Once Alexandra is gone, Phase 2 can begin. She's too smart not to notice what we're doing. Richard, I trust you'll handle her departure discreetly. Remember, we need her to be the scapegoat, not a whistleblower. My hands trembled as I reread the message. James hadn't been my ally at all. He had been working with Richard from the beginning, planning my downfall as part of their scheme. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't been out playing anyone. I had been a pawn in a much larger game. But pawns can become queens. And with this evidence, I now held the power to take down not just Richard, but James as well. As I headed to Taylor Innovations for the board meeting, I sent a message to Mark and Emma. Everything has changed. Meet me at the office. It's time to finish this. What I didn't tell them was that my plan for justice had transformed into something far more ambitious. If the board wanted someone to repair the damage, they were about to get their wish, but on my terms. Richard Taylor and James Conrad were about to learn a painful lesson. Never underestimate the woman you plan to destroy. She might just end up taking everything you have. The boardroom of Taylor Innovations fell silent as I walked in. 12 faces turned toward me. 10 board members, Daniel and Richard, who was seated at the far end of the table. His face darkened when he saw me. "What is she doing here?" he demanded. "This is a private board meeting." Barbara Dixon, the board chairwoman, raised her hand to silence him. Ms. Winters was invited at my request. I took the empty seat beside Daniel, directly opposite Richard. Mark and Emma waited outside, backup evidence in hand. "Thank you for coming, Alexandra," Barbara said. "The board has been discussing some concerning allegations about financial irregularities at Taylor Innovations." Richard leaned forward. "Baseless rumors started by a disgruntled former employee and my misguided son. I've already explained." "I have proof," I interrupted calmly, placing my laptop on the table. "Not rumors, not allegations. Documented evidence of systematic fraud, intellectual property theft, and market manipulation." The projector hummed to life as I connected my computer and began walking the board through what we had discovered. The doctored financial reports, the stolen ideas, the discrepancies between what was reported to the board versus regulatory agencies. Richard's face grew increasingly pale. "This is absurd. You've manipulated these documents." "These came directly from the company servers," Daniel countered. "Files you thought were secured or deleted." "And this," I said, pulling up the email exchange between Richard and James Conrad, "explains the motive behind it all. A plan to artificially devalue Taylor Innovations to facilitate a hostile takeover by Meridian Enterprises." Gasps echoed around the table. Thomas Westfield, the longest-serving board member, removed his glasses in shock. "Richard, is this true?" "Of course not." Richard stood abruptly. "This is a fabrication. Alexandra is clearly working with Meridian to undermine us. That dinner with James Conrad was a setup," I finished for him. "One that you knew about because Daniel told you, exactly as we planned." Richard's eyes darted to his son, who met his gaze unflinchingly. "We needed to know if you were watching me," I continued. "And you were, just as you've been manipulating everyone in this room for years." Barbara Dixon studied the evidence on the screen. "These financial discrepancies alone warrant immediate action. The board will need to notify the SEC. And that's not all," I added, bringing up another document. "This is a formal statement from Emma Torres, detailing how her innovations for the Westfield campaign were stolen and credited to Daniel without her knowledge." Daniel nodded. "It's true. I was given credit for work I never did. My father assured me it was standard procedure. Mentoring, he called it." Richard's composure finally cracked. "You ungrateful!" He caught himself, visibly struggling to maintain control. "This is a family matter that has been twisted to serve Alexandra's vendetta against me." "A family matter?" I echoed incredulously. "Is that what you call securities fraud and intellectual property theft?" Thomas Westfield cleared his throat. I think we've seen enough. I move that we suspend Richard Taylor from all duties pending a full investigation and that we cooperate fully with regulatory authorities. Seconded, came multiple voices. Barbara nodded grimly. All in favor? Every hand except Richard's rose. His face contorted with fury as he looked around the table. Former allies now turned against him. You'll regret this, he said, his voice low and dangerous. All of you. Without me, this company is nothing. Actually, Barbara replied, we need to discuss interim leadership. She turned to me. Alexandra, given your intimate knowledge of our operations and your evident commitment to ethical business practices, the board would like to offer you the position of acting CEO while we navigate this crisis. Richard laughed bitterly. You can't be serious. After she deliberately sabotaged the company? I didn't sabotage the company, Richard, I said quietly. I saved it from you. Barbara raised an eyebrow. Alexandra? Your answer? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. I accept, with one condition. Daniel stays as COO. He had the courage to stand against his father when it mattered most. That's the kind of integrity this company needs. Daniel looked at me in surprise, but Barbara nodded. Agreed. As security escorted a shell-shocked Richard from the building, I sent a quick text to Mark and Emma. It's done. We won. 3 months later, I stood at the podium during the quarterly investors meeting, presenting honest financials for the first time in years. The road to recovery had been challenging. Stock prices had initially plummeted when the scandal broke, but transparency and a clear vision had slowly rebuilt investor confidence. And finally, I concluded my presentation. I'm pleased to announce that Taylor Innovations has reached an agreement with the SEC. With full cooperation and our comprehensive compliance overhaul, we've minimized penalties while maximizing our path forward. Applause filled the room as I stepped away from the podium. Emma, now officially the head of creative development, gave me a thumbs up from the side of the stage. As the crowd dispersed, Daniel approached me. Congratulations, CEO Winters. The board made it official this morning? I nodded. And congratulations to you, COO Taylor. Quite a change from where we were 4 months ago. My father's sentencing is next week, he said quietly. Will you be there? No, I replied. That chapter is closed for me. I'm looking forward, not back. Daniel smiled. Speaking of looking forward, James Conrad called again. Meridian is still interested in that partnership you proposed. On our terms this time, I reminded him. Equal partnership, not acquisition. Of course. You made that abundantly clear when you threatened to release those emails if he didn't play ball. I smiled. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's rebuilding something better from the ashes. Later that evening, as I stood in my new office, Richard's old space completely redesigned, I looked out at the city lights and reflected on the journey. What had started as a quest for revenge had transformed into something more meaningful. Justice, redemption, and renewal. My phone buzzed with a message from Margaret Taylor. You've accomplished what I never could. Thank you for giving my son a second chance. I typed back, we all deserve second chances, even companies. The sweet taste of revenge had faded, replaced by something more satisfying. The knowledge that I had not just survived betrayal, but had transformed it into triumph. Not just for myself, but for everyone who had ever been underestimated, overlooked, or cast aside. Sometimes the best response to a new era without you is simply to create an era of your own.